FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's a popular term I see used a lot in the privacy community, which leads me into a topic I've been wanting to talk about, and that is some best practices I follow when researching and analyzing information I find on the internet. The example I'm going to be referencing today is an article written by a security researcher about Apple. I'm not making this video to shill or defend Apple. I'm making this because if we want to have real conversations about privacy and security, I believe it should be based on facts and not lazily written articles attempting to lead readers down a path the author wants. This article was published on the 15th of January 2023. As you can see, the article has a very intriguing title, to the point that when I first read the title, my first thought was, wow, this will be a great video topic. But then my skepticism kicked in before I boosted the post on Mastodon, and I looked into it some more. There's a lot of information out there, and sadly catchy headlines are the ones that get shared first without much validation. So let me take you through my process when I evaluate an article, especially one that I'm considering sharing with an audience. So when I first get to the page, I see the title. Okay, this should be good. In the sidebar, quick about the author, Jeffrey Paul is a hacker and security researcher living in Berlin. So after reading that, one of the first things I think is, okay, this should be something technical with a lot of detail. This individual is saying they are a hacker and security researcher, so I automatically raise my expectations for what the information should be. I also want to mention that this is a very bold title. Apple has begun scanning your local image files without consent. That is a very strong claim to make, and I would expect something equally strong in the actual writing to back that up. So to start off, we have the preface. I don't use iCloud, I don't use Apple ID, I don't use Mac App Store, I don't store photos in the macOS Photos application, even locally. I never opted into Apple network services of any kind. I use macOS software on Apple hardware. So that gives us a background. Okay, there's no Apple services in use per the user's choice. Today I was browsing some images in a subfolder of my documents, some HEIC files taken with an iPhone, copied to a Mac using image capture program. So far so good. We have the preface. We have what they were doing when whatever they're about to describe occurred. I use a program called Little Snitch, which alerts me to network traffic attempted by the programs I use. I have all network access denied for a lot of Apple OS level apps. And then starting here, we start to see the beginning of the path the author wants us to go down without actually saying it. The author starts giving us some background, how Apple turns over data on over 30,000 customers per year. And now this next paragraph is the actual findings that the author is trying to communicate in the article. Imagine my surprise when browsing these images in the Finder. Little Snitch told me that macOS is now connecting to Apple APIs via a program named Media Analysis Daemon, a background process for analyzing media files. But then as we continue on in the article, I'm not going to read this to you, I'll link it all below if you want to read it yourself. But instead of reading more detailed technical analysis and information, the author just starts to talk about in 2021 when Apple announced their plan to begin client-side scanning for CSAM, and the following paragraphs continue to talk about that, why they were doing it, how Apple retracted that because of a public backlash. Talks about how we need to read Apple's statements carefully because they're very good at writing technically truthful things that say one thing that cause reporters to report a different thing, which is ironic, as you'll see shortly, because that's exactly what the author's doing in this article. And as we continue on, we still get that. Again, we have 5 bullet points talking about Apple and how they were doing their client-side scanning, how they said they weren't going to scan us, and then 1 bullet point talking about the author and their singular event that was alerted on by Little Snitch. We then continue on to more paragraphs talking about what governments will legally require Apple to scan in the future. This is your first and only warning. Stock macOS now invades your privacy via the internet when browsing local files. So finally at the bottom, we do see this was observed on the current version of macOS Ventura 13.1. And then one final reminder, if you have nothing to hide, you've done nothing wrong. Those are the times when it's most important to limit information. So just to put this in perspective a little bit more, this is those first few paragraphs that gave the preface, a little bit of background, and what the author found. This is everything else, talking about Apple's CSAM scanning, how they're bad, the government, everything else. So going back to red flags when I read an article, if someone gives me 1 or 2 paragraphs with some technical detail, and then the following 10 paragraphs are about an event they want us to remember, to me that's a little bit suspicious. And I feel like I'm being led down a path to correlate 2 events without the author actually saying that. So after reading that, I had some hesitation about actually trusting what I read in this article. or about what the author found. So the next thing I like to do in that case is to actually search for the title of the article and see what else shows up, see if anyone on the internet is talking about it. Typically, if it's a newly published article, I'll search for it on Google because they usually index first before other search engines. So in this case, we'll search for the title. And we can see here, I actually already clicked it in the past, but one of the first results is for Hacker News. This is a forum where information can be posted and shared and people can comment on it. And we can see here the article was posted 25 days ago. This is the site we were on reading it, Sneak.Berlin. You might notice it was published by Sneak. And if we go to this website, we can see most of the handles the author has are Sneak. We don't see the Hacker News one listed here. But if we go to the homepage of the website, they list that their Hacker News handle is at Sneak. So we can confirm that the author is the one that posted this on Hacker News. We can also see the article was flagged. And if you start reading through the comments, we can start to see pretty quickly other people had similar doubts. It talks about the domain that showed up in the author's image, smoot.apple.com, is used for Spotlight. This article is rightly flagged as BS. This guy found something on Little Snitch and suddenly exposing some dark company secret in the story. I understand these are just some strangers on the internet, but they're already confirming some of these suspicions I had about this article. And we know that Sneak is the username for the author. So if we search for Sneak on the page, we can start to see some comments from the author. If I made any false claims in the article, please let me know ASAP so I can correct them. I was very careful to report facts only and let the readers draw their own conclusions about what is happening here. You didn't report any false claims. You reported a bunch of unrelated claims without any technical research and then pointed your readers to a conclusion that lacked any technical or journalistic merit. It's shallow alarmism. And I want to be clear that I understand people might publish information that's inaccurate, but if someone goes back then and edits their information or adds something at the bottom saying, after further research, this was determined. But what you find from reading this is that the author chose to die on this hill. I didn't make that claim because I have not reverse engineered Media Analysis D to know precisely what it's doing. And this, I think, sums it up right here. We have a lazily written article where the author found something that they knew would get clicks. So nothing that we found is concrete proof of what's going on, but my trust with him is lacking because instead of adding corrections or addendums to his article, he chose to publicly defend it and continually say that he did not make those claims, even though he employed the same practice that he bashed Apple for, which is Apple is very good at writing technically truthful things that say one thing that cause reporters to report a different thing. Now, to contrast the article that was posted by Jeffrey, Mysk put a thread on Twitter where they countered what was actually claimed in that article. No, macOS doesn't send info about your local photos to Apple. We analyzed Media Analysis D after an extraordinary claim by Jeffrey Paul that it scans local photos and secretly sends the results to an Apple server. They did a thorough analysis of what was claimed by the author. They analyzed the process, the network traffic. They did all the work that Jeffrey did not do or chose not to do. The unfortunate part is that it's likely these tweets with actual technical data to back them up did not get the same attention the original article did. They posted an update that this was indeed a bug and was fixed in macOS 13.2. This process no longer makes calls to Apple servers. So that's what I do when I find an article that I think is too good to be true, especially if I'm considering making a video on the topic. I do want to touch on one last point on why I think publishing this type of information and letting readers draw their own conclusion is irresponsible. This article had a clear conclusion it wanted the readers to come to, and that's exactly what happened. Two other popular YouTubers with audiences much larger than myself, Mental Outlaw and Louis Rossman, both published videos on the topic. In defense of Louis, he did publish an updated video correcting what he said in this one. If you produce content for a large audience, at least spend a few minutes fact-checking the articles you're talking about. At the end of the day, people are out there trying to make the best educated and informed decisions that they can. Content and blog posts like this are not helpful, and they do more harm than good. I absolutely agree these companies are doing things that are not good for user privacy, but if we're going to have discussions like this, they should be based on accurate technical details, not conspiratorial narratives based on fear, uncertainty, and doubt that get clicks and shares. So if you liked this video and made it this far listening to me talk, I think you'll like this top video, and the algorithm thinks you'll like the bottom one.